And welcome to a new episode of the Rebel Radio podcast in chilly Texas, which is not something we say super often. But a second nice cold front has come through and frozen our willies off a little bit. And but
frozen our willies off.
I mean, I'm just saying, man. Yeah, it's a little cold. He likes to shrink up there and hide a little bit in this kind of weather.
Sure is.
But man, yeah, and. I don't know. What was I even going to say? But welcome to the show, the RubberRadioPodcast.com, where you find all your radio needs and podcast needs, I should say, and find all the links to all the wonderful apps you can find us on. And we got the whole crew here today talking a fun movie and some other things we're going to talk about here on today's show. How are you, fellas?
Good. I'm back. Please clap. No, push. And add to your comment about the weather, it'll never be as cold as my heart.
Yes, we know, Long. We know. Any longtime listeners know about the evil Dr. Tran and how cold his heart is.
That's my favorite joke during the winter.
And, yeah. Matt?
Yeah. No,
you're not going to fall asleep already. The show just started, man.
No, dude. No, I'm good. I have slept enough. And I'm good on sleep.
Okay.
But yeah, everything's good. I've been meaning to go see Captain America: Brave New World because I was off and the kids were in school, and I'm like, man, why not? But I feel like it's Dogman hit streaming early, and I think maybe these recent releases might hit streaming early. So part of me doesn't want to go out and do anything, especially with it being cold outside. I don't feel like getting out and doing anything. I went through, you know how much car wash stuff I have. I did a drive-through car wash, and the guy was like, "Oh, do you want to sign up for a subscription or anything like that? We got a good deal going." And I'm like, "No, dude, I can't wash my car in this weather. I'll just do a drive-through thing. I'm a touch up whenever I get home. If I buy a subscription, my wife's going to kill me. I have all this shit at home paying for a subscription. But yeah, man, cold ass weather for Texas. I think it clears up in a few days, but yeah, us Texans aren't used to this.
So
stuff.
Basically what I got out of all that is you're a pussy, you're afraid of the cold weather. But anyway, but yeah, man, damn it, you made me lose my train of thought by cracking a joke. Oh, I do want to give a shout out to our boy, our ex co-host from the first 100 episodes or so, Frank, recovery from a surgery he had. So we wish him the best, and of course,
yes,
in the speedy recovery. And we could easily crack some jokes here about him getting, a penis enlargement or something like that, but it would just be too easy, and he would expect it from us. But no, we do wish him the best, and maybe he got a boob job. I don't know, but
oh jeez.
Hey man, we got you, because if he listens to this, he's gonna laugh, and that's what's funny about it. I'm gonna tell him that we fucked with him on the show, so that he will listen to it. But hopefully by the time this episode releases on Monday, he's back home from the hospital, and and he is doing well on his way to recovery.
Yes.
So, but yeah, no, we do wish you the best, buddy, and hope you recover well for your penis enlargement. It's just too fucking easy with Frank. Yeah, and I was just looking. I was scrolling the phone, man. There's not much news. We're going to skip news. We're going to get into some other things to talk about this week. Well, there is some news. Actually, there's no news. This kind of hit today. Kind of big news. The rights to James Bond have suddenly reverted back to MGM, which is owned by Amazon. And MGM owned Bond throughout much of the early days in the 60s and 70s and into the 80s. And this is big news. And not only is that, though, but the Broccoli family is no longer going to be involved. They sold their rights as well as producers, which means Amazon and MGM can start fresh with their own producers. This is huge news, considering the Broccoli family has ran the James Bond franchise since the very beginnings. There's never been a Bond film made without their names on it. So this is for anyone who follows James Bond or the long enduring franchise, this is a big deal. It gives Amazon and MGM a completely clean slate to do whatever they want. That said, I hope Amazon understands and knows the property they have, and hopefully they hire the right people for the job, because I would hate for them to. I like the essence of what James Bond is and how he plays out, and I think they did a good job by modernizing him with the Daniel Craig films. And I would be okay with them continuing down that path, but I don't want them to over modernize him. You know what I mean by that? Let's not turn him into Ethan Hunt. We have Ethan Hunt in the Mission Impossible movies for their reasons. Let's keep James Bond doing what James Bond does. Yes. I want the basic essence of Bond still being there. I don't want him to go too young. I think Bond should still be a spy in his 30s that has a little seasoning behind him. So we'll see where they do with this. But I expect him to move quickly, since there hasn't been a Bond film since 2021 during COVID. Yeah. I imagine that Amazon's going to probably get this off the ground pretty quick, and we'll have a Bond film in theaters, next year, 2027.
I finally saw that movie, by the way.
Yeah, No Time to Die.
Mm-hmm. Hated it. So
that's harsh, but okay.
That's just me, though. I hated it.
You see, the new owner, he posted on Twitter or X, who should I pick, and everyone's throwing in Henry Cavill.
Cavill's too old at this point. I mean,
Daniel Craig was 38 when he started.
No, he wasn't that old.
Yes, sir.
He made Casino Royale.
In 2005, he was 38.
He's not 58 now. For real?
No, he's at 38, right?
Daniel Craig age.
Oh, just use your fucking
56. He is 56. So maybe he was 36. So,
mid-30s. Yeah. I didn't think he was that old. Yeah, but you're thinking, though, by the time they film it and it gets released from 2 years, I don't think it'll go with Cavill. It wouldn't go with someone who's almost 40. Because you want to build a franchise out of this. You want somebody, 30 to 32.
Oh, yeah. Cavill is 41.
Yeah.
I thought maybe he was 39 or so.
Cavill would have been great, 5, 6, 7 years ago. But
yeah.
And I don't really like the idea of Aaron Taylor Johnson either. I know that was a popular pick a year ago or so. I don't see Aaron Taylor Johnson as Bond. I like the guy, but I just don't see him as James Bond. I don't know if I have a personal pick. It's one of those things that I'll see what the producers decide and trust their judgment on it. We go from there. I know Tom Hardy was a popular pick. Yeah, maybe that's way too small. He would have been too small. He was a popular pick a few years ago, but I think an unknown is a good way to go with it. Maybe you take one of those routes where you bring a well-known director in and cast an unknown in the role. That way, at least you have some familiarity for the audiences. And see where they go with it.
It'd be funny if Spielberg finally got a chance to do Bond.
Yeah. Would he do it this late in his career still? I think he probably would. Christopher Nolan.
Actually, he said that he wouldn't know how to direct action again, because it's been a long time since he's done that.
I know Nolan has shown interest in Bond, but he's signed with Warner Brothers, so he's probably not, or Universal. I think he signed with Universal.
Yeah.
And he's making his Odyssey film, which
I'm interested in that.
Yeah. So we'll see what Amazon does with this. But big news hit today. That was unexpected. And now I guess we know now why things were so quiet on the James Bond front the last 6 to 8 months. Well, we know they were selling it, and that's why things were so quiet. I imagine those negotiations take a few months, so we'll see. But it's good news, I think, to get things off the ground, since Amazon owns the property.
I think we'll see how it goes, because honestly, I think they were kind of running out of ideas on what to do with Bond. Considering as far as modern sensibilities are concerned, they could do him as just pure action guy, but all the stuff that comes with him are kind of outdated,
Right. So. Well, yeah, and I think that the Craig films updated some of that to an extent, but they still felt. But you're right, they still felt like they were held back to not overdo it. Like they didn't want to. They didn't want to ruin what made Bond Bond, but they didn't want to go too far with making it more modern as well.
A lot of folks who are involved with Bond, the writers, the directors, the actors, they all said that if it weren't for Austin Powers, ruining all the tropes of Bond, then it would have been a lot easier if it weren't for Austin Powers trilogy. They were saying that it's like we kind of blame Austin Powers because we were kind of overthinking it a little bit. It's like, is this too Austin Powers now? They're like, that's what held them back too creatively.
I know Pierce Brosnan blames Austin Powers for the failure of his last 3 Bond films.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because they weren't really making fun of him, but they were making fun of a lot of the older films. Your Sean Connery films. That's not a woman, that's a man. Yeah.
A lot of vagina.
Yeah. Making fun of pussy. Yeah. Or what is it? Pussy Galore. Yeah, Pussy Galore was her name. So they were just like, really, Pussy Galore? Well, I guess let's just make her a lot of vagina.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I enjoy the Bond franchise, but I think it needs something refreshing.
Yeah.
And I really did. I felt like that. Like I really enjoyed the first 3 Craig films a lot. I thought Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, and Skyfall made a really great little trilogy. And then when Spectre came out, it felt like they were kind of forcing things, and then they corrected.
That's what they were saying. Like a lot of things in Spectre they wanted to do, but they were just thinking about Austin Powers too much,
right?
To implement some of the classics.
Now I did enjoy No Time to Die. I didn't think it was that bad. Some things maybe I would have done differently, but. Was there one in between? How many did Craig do? Just 5, right? Was there one I'm missing in between Spectre and No Time to Die?
There's Casino Royale, Skyfall,
Quantum of Solace,
Spectre.
I feel like he did
No Time to Die.
Yeah, that's it. No Time to Die. 5 films.
5 films.
Roger Moore still has a record of 7, baby.
So Roger Moore.
Roger
Moore, man with the golden gun.
Man with the golden gun.
The space. What was the space
Octopussy,
one? Yeah.
The space one. Spy Who Loved Me.
Mm-hmm.
His first appearance. Live and Let Die.
Yeah.
A View to a Kill. And
Moonraker was the one we were thinking of.
Moonraker. Oh, and For Your Eyes Only. So 7.
For Your Eyes Only.
Yeah.
Yep.
But Craig did do the voice for the Xbox game Bloodstone, which was actually a really good James Bond story.
Mm-hmm.
I played through that game very quickly because it was so well done. So that was a good one. I remember people talking how that should have been a Bond film because it was just a good game.
Do you remember the video game adaptation of From Russia with Love?
I heard it was good. I never played it though.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, I think they had Sean Connery revoice it.
Yeah, they did. I played Bloodstone, and then I played the Quantum of Solace adaptation, which actually was very good. Considering the movie wasn't well received, the game adaptation was well done because it was from the same studio that did Bloodstone. They adapted that game also, so the movie also, so it turned into a good game. But we'll see, man. Maybe they'll find an actor that's not quite as curmudgeon and as Craig could be too, always bitching about having to do it. But yet he sure made him because he wanted the money.
Yeah.
So
of course he'll take that.
They're always after me, Lucky Charms.
Yeah. Now he'll go and make 50 glass Knives Out films. And,
that was an Austin Powers record.
Yeah,
it was from the first one.
That's really kind of the big news that I saw this week, which happened to hit today as we're recording this. But other than that, man, besides the movie we're going to talk about soon, Okay, I have to give some backstory to this, and I know you guys know what I'm going to talk about because y'all saw my Facebook post. And so this is a movie, a little back history for people that might be listening for the first time. You know, I'm a huge fan of The Crow, the graphic novel, the original book. And I have been probably trashing this idea of a remake, redo of the film for years. The only time I think I didn't trash it was when I interviewed James O'Barr back in 2012, and he had mentioned that Luke Evans was involved and that they were going to use the comic book as a storyboard, and it was going to be a hyper realistic version where they're going to tell the comic story on the screen. I was like, okay, well that sounds, if you're going to adapt the book directly, okay, because there's things in the Brandon Lee film that aren't perfect. Like 30 years later, it still bothers me that Shelley and Eric are killed by a housing project. The whole idea of Eric and Shelley being killed was a random act of violence. I've never liked. That's the only thing I don't like in the 94 version is the way they're killed. It's not the way it should have been done. But that said, the movie's still a classic. And then of course Luke Evans got busy making the Hobbit films, and that version fell apart. And then James Momoa was involved, and I never liked that idea of like this big muscly guy can't be engraving. And then that version fell apart. Didn't seem like the remake was going to die until a couple years ago, where Rupert Sanders got involved and Bill Skarsgård, and we finally got this Crow remake off the ground. And last year when it was coming out, we trashed the trailers, we trashed the look of the film. We did like, this is a terrible idea. Mm-hmm. But then I remember seeing the trailers, and I felt like, okay, this doesn't really look like a remake of The Crow, but we weren't sure from the trailers because you can't get context. And then I read some reviews that saying it wasn't really a remake, and I was like, okay, so maybe maybe it's not a remake. And I was moderately curious to see it. So I finally hit Stars this week, streaming for free. For free for people that have Stars. Thankfully, Matt has Stars on his account, and since he shares that account with me, so I decided to go ahead and give this new version of The Crow a watch. And I can safely say it's not a remake. It's actually kind of its own thing. I mean, other than being called Eric and Shelley, and thematically having the same things, it's its own film. It's nothing like the 94 version at all, other than maybe like 2 lines of dialogue, and then and the name's Eric and Shelley. It's more supernatural. It plays differently. It's
more supernatural.
Very, very different film. As a Crow film, it's fine. They maybe should have. The original title for this was The Crow Reborn. Maybe they should have kept that title because it would have differentiated it from there. And maybe they should have named them Alex and Amanda instead of Eric and Shelley. I don't know. I'm just throwing names out there. Yeah. And I think that would have maybe, because the biggest thing in this version is Eric and Shelley are druggies. And in the comics, Eric and Shelley are very confident people who love each other. He's a confident musician. They just happen to live in a bad city. And bad shit happens and they get killed. So I didn't like that, this new version. Like, to me, that's not Eric and Shelley, and I think that's where it bothered me, them being called that. They should have been called different names. But that said, the movie's actually pretty entertaining. It's well shot. Skarsgård is honestly really good. I mean, that guy's got a lot of talent as an actor. Twigs, she's not so great. She can't keep her mouth shut the entire film. Like she's doing like that mouth open thing the whole time, but she's okay. For what the material she's given to work with. But I have to maybe apologize a little bit that this movie I trashed isn't as bad as people made it out to be. It's actually a decent, okay film if you separate it from the original Crow film, because it is its own thing. It really is. It's not a remake. They didn't trash the legacy of the 94 film. They didn't trash the legacy of James O'Barr's comic. I am curious how much O'Barr was actually involved in this, other than just having a creator credit, because I just wonder if he had any involvement in it at all. Because I noticed he didn't have a producer credit. Usually if the creator has any involvement, they get a producer credit as well. And he didn't have one. So I'm wondering if it's just, they bought the rights and they made a movie. If you're a fan of The Crow in the series, or you're worried about it destroying the legacy, don't be. It's an okay watch. It's not. I probably won't watch it again, and it's not something that's going to be memorable like the original. The staircase scene at the end of the movie is actually really good, and a lot of clever ways to kill people with a sword. I'll give it that. I found that very entertaining. So there's parts of it that are worth watching. It's Certainly better than any of those sequels they made in the 90s. That's for sure. It's better than all those crappy sequels they made.
Yes.
So it's, that said, it's not terrible. It really isn't. I'll give the credit for making a decently entertaining film. It plays much more of the love story. It takes a while in the film before he becomes the Crow. It plays more of the supernatural elements, which in some ways I kind of like. In the original film, they had to cut out the skull cowboy because the special effects didn't work. And that was the spirit guide that Eric had
Kronos.
between the real world and the land of the dead. And so they play up on that in this with the skull cowboy's not in it, but there is a guide for Eric. And I thought that was kind of cool. So there are some elements that I thought worked. Is it a great film? No, but it's not a bad film either. It's, somewhere in the middle. If you're bored for an hour and 40 minutes and say you're curious about it, give it a watch.
Yeah.
I really trashed this whole idea hard, but I ended up watching it and I actually ended. I was like, wow, I didn't hate that. It's not bad. Did you finish it, Matt? I know you had started it.
Man, I started it, and I the beginning was hard for me to get into.
It starts off a little slow
because I'm like, why are we trying to develop a romance between Eric and Shelley? In the original, it just was, and you got little snippets here and there, and you were able to understand that bond between them. And this one, it like you said, they're both junkies,
right,
and you don't know who they're running from.
I agree with you on that. Like,
yeah,
the whole idea of Eric and Shelley is that it's pure love, that they love each other with everything they are, and you didn't. And in the original film, and even the graphic novel presents that to you, that you just understand it. And I do agree with that. In the film, it felt like, okay, they're just very quickly become star-crossed lovers, and it's kind of pushed on you. But once you get past that and realize it's its own thing, I became okay with it about 30 minutes into the film or so. Especially during the death scene. At that moment, you're like, okay, you kind of get past that. And you're like, okay, I moved on from it now.
I think if they would have started the movie right whenever they get killed, then it would have set a fast and abrupt tone for the film. I think it would be way better.
Well, yeah, because the film is much better paced once the death scene happens.
Yes, and you don't know anything about the bad guys or the dude that was from Wonder Woman. That they had play the guy who sends people to hell for him.
Yeah, okay, that part was a little confusing. Like, what was he supposed to be like? He worked for the devil?
Yeah, I guess so.
That part was a little weird. Yeah,
he's Satan's middleman, I guess. But yeah, all of that, you skip all that. If you start it right there, it's a completely different film. I did doze off in and out, but I did catch the stairwell scene at the end. And that
was a well-shot scene.
Yeah. There are elements I like from it, like, his little Wolverine healing like factors, where he's like looking at the cuts, like mend themselves together, and he's like pushing in his intestines that were cut out.
Kind of gross too.
Yeah, it's gross, but it was kind of cool. So there are things that I liked, and like you said, this is not the worst Crow film.
No.
It's not the best, but it's definitely something you can enjoy watching. Yes, you can spend time picking apart the movie, and you can pick it apart, especially if you're going to compare it to the '94 film. Which
I think is unfair to it, because once you watch it and realize it's not a remake of the '94 film, it's almost unfair to compare it. Yeah.
So I think if you're just going in and you're watching it as like an anthology series, which is kind of what you should expect out of it, you can get some enjoyment out of it. So I think it's worth it. There's some cool things in it, and I think they just needed to start it at a different spot.
And I do like Skarsgård. I think he was good in John Wick. He's a good actor. I do appreciate the nod to the original comic with the trench coat at the end, and a lot of people complain about the mullet, but the mullet's directly from the comic. I mean, so he kind of did look like Eric at the end of the film for the comics. The makeup was obviously a little different because it's more of a supernatural idea, the way the makeup is developed in this. But yeah, man, I know, shocking that I as much as I trashed the idea of this film, that I didn't hate it.
Yeah.
But man, I
I'm
got to give
surprised.
credit where credit's due. Sometimes things just surprise you, and this one definitely surprised me when it was over. I was like, okay, this wasn't really that bad. Um, so it was cool.
Wow, you guys talked about this movie for a long time. This might as well be a feature movie.
Sub feature.
Um,
I have
so
a confession to make.
Uh-oh.
I've seen The Crow once, but I've never watched it since then. I was pretty much one and done on The Crow. And I think that one time we had to watch it, I just read a summary of it, but didn't watch the whole movie. And I was like, because I didn't have time.
all right, Frank. And it's like a once a year watch for me. I mean, I don't know what it is about the original. I think it just came out at
Ernie
the time.
Hudson.
Well, yeah. Well, that when it came out, man, I was in high school. I was very what's the word?
Impressionable.
Impressionable at the time, and the graphic novel was one of the first very adult graphic novels I read. And I saw the movie, and I was just blown away by Brandon's performance and the tragedy of him dying while making this film. And just and because the '90s, that era, man, was very impersonal for me as far as developing my love for film. I mean, yeah, at that point, I already loved Star Wars and things like that. But man, I started discovering John Woo films, The Crow, and just James Cameron films. I mean, that era was just from like 1990 to like 96 was just really developed me further as a film fan. I would even step back before 1990. I would say 89 up when Batman came out. In that era, man, and The Crow fell into that era along with the John Woo films and James Cameron films. And just because I was becoming a young man, so I was starting to discover adult films and not those kind of adult films, people. Even though I discovered those too, but no, that's just true, man. That's about the age. You're 16 to 19. You start watching. You realize what cinema is besides just Star Wars, and so that was that era for me. And so I really love The Crow. But with that said, anything you guys also watched this week or checked out?
Just played a bunch of Monster Hunter, but that's about it. Monster Hunter World, in anticipation of Monster Hunter Wilds coming out next month.
Is that Mia Jovovich movie based on that game?
Yeah,
No,
terribly.
I heard it wasn't very good. I just saw that her in a movie called Monster Hunter, and I figured it was.
Yeah, it is based on that franchise, but yeah, it's a Paul Wes Anderson film, and he peaked with the Event Horizon and Mortal Kombat, and
that's
never been good since.
Yeah,
maybe Resident Evil.
Nah, I think even Mortal Kombat and Event Horizon were his peaks. Yeah.
Yeah. But other than that, how about you, Matt?
Yeah, so I had actually gotten started on this last week, but forgot to mention it. And I watched the latest new episode today, and that's Invincible Season 3 is out, and up to episode 5 is streaming. I'm a fan of the series. I haven't read the comic book, but I wouldn't mind picking up some copies, trying to see where this goes. But I'm a fan of the Invincible series so far on Amazon, and really hope The Boys comes out sooner rather than later. Hopefully they don't postpone it again. But
they're filming it right now. I know Carl Urban posted something on Instagram. They were filming up near Niagara Falls.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Monarch Season 2 wrapped filming today.
Oh, Monarch
I saw that.
2.
Yeah.
It's expected probably about when the first series came out around January. So I think I was reading they expected possibly January also.
Yeah, they're on Skull Island, and I'm kind of looking forward to it. I mean, it got really good at the last 2 episodes. The middle episodes are kind of mediocre.
Yeah.
Slow, but yeah, looking forward to it.
But yeah, no, that's everything I've got. I did watch Roadhouse just because I wanted to watch a Swayze film.
Oh, that one.
Swayze, yeah. And I had I asked my wife what her top 5 Swayze film.
How many man crushes does Matt have? Hugh Jackman, Patrick Swayze, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean,
Chris Evans.
Chris Evans. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, dude, how many man crushes does this dude have, man? It's like, I mean, if you
Swayze,
weren't
man.
I swear, dude, if you weren't married,
Swayze was great.
You know,
And they're all white.
yeah, man.
No.
Are they?
I would argue that
I
Swayze
guess,
only
yeah.
made. I would argue that Swayze only made one great movie, and that's Point Break.
Oh, he was good in Ghost.
He kicked ass as a ghost, as a president. He was he Reagan? I think he was Reagan.
Remember.
Yeah, and he was the Reagan dead president. And then he kicked ass in Red Dawn. You know, he was in Red Dawn.
Wasn't he in The Outsiders?
He was in The Outsiders, dude. He
Small part.
yeah.
Oh, a small part.
He was the
That
older
was such
brother.
an ensemble cast. So yeah.
Yeah, you had a stacked cast. But
It's funny
yeah,
you
man.
mentioned that. I was looking through movies, and I have like a list of movies that might do this year. The Outsiders is actually on that list of a possible movie to do this year.
To Wong Fu.
No, oh, Lord.
that was one of Jackie's favorite of his film. She liked him in Tu Wong Fu.
Anywho, Matt,
Yep.
we know that's your top 5 as well. It's okay. We forgive you. Next week's top 5, folks. Matt's top 5 man crushes. All right. Well, let's get today's featured film then. Bruce Lee was. It's funny that we just mentioned one of his son's classic films here just a few minutes earlier, but Bruce, man, he only made a handful of films before he was tragically taken from the world, and this is a movie that was a passion project of his, as he really wanted to direct a kind of action comedy, and he kind of fought with studios on it because they're like, oh no, we don't hire you to do comedy, we hire you just to kick butt. And he had to convince them, like, hey, don't worry, I'm going to kick some butt too, along with some comedy. And so he got the studio to finance the film and make this movie, and he even wrote the script for it, and that is The Way of the Dragon. It's been a bit since I've summarized the movie. Pretty simple summary though. He flies to Rome to meet up with his this girl that her uncle called him for help, as they're having thugs, as they call them, keep coming to his restaurant, running customers off as they're trying to force him out of the restaurant business to buy the property from him. So Bruce Lee's character of Tang is basically the enforcer. They don't realize that he knows martial arts, and he's there to stop the thugs and keep them from taking over the restaurant. And he does so. And that's basically the plot in simplistic versions. It's supposed to be kind of an action comedy. The comedy is a bit dry at times.
Yeah.
But yet there's a couple moments that are kind of funny. You're like, because it doesn't quite really come across like modern comedy does, if that makes sense. And so you're not sure if you're supposed to laugh, but it has some some good fights in it. It has some decent comedy. It has Chuck fucking Norris at the end of the movie.
It does.
A very young Chuck Norris. So there's some good elements in this. This is a movie that I had not seen until about 3 or 4 years ago. I think I watched this one for the first time. I had never seen The Way of the Dragon. I'd seen The Big Boss, and I had seen Enter the Dragon and Game of Death, but I had never seen The Way of the Dragon until a few years ago. So this is probably maybe the third time I've seen this, and I actually really like this movie. I know the running joke on the podcast is that Mark doesn't like comedy, but that's not true. I kind of get the comedy elements of this movie, and overall, I think this is a really enjoyable film because it's well paced, has some good moments in it. I love the stereotypical bad guys throughout this film. They just absolutely crack me up. The big muscly guy with the beard who thinks he can take on Bruce Lee, and the old white guy who's like the mobster, and the very 1970s disco guys that are tall and lanky with the hair. They think they're tough. There's some really, I think that's where I laugh at the movie the most. It's just the background characters in this are hilarious to me.
I like the first bad guy that throws a punch at one of the restaurant workers. He's just like, okay, who's going to be first? And you can tell he doesn't really know how to fight. He can just throw a couple punches.
Right.
And then whenever, Bruce gets out there, he just tears them all up. And yeah, it's very comedic how they are flustered with Bruce, and then the the brief nude scene that I did not expect to
Which
happen.
comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, the girl is like, I'm like, what's Long talking about brief nude scene? Because we were talking, we had just talked about Enter the Dragon, and I thought he was talking about the brief nude scene that I had mentioned before, but he's actually talking about Way of the Dragon, because I think you were watching it at this point. You're watching it as we're talking in
That was
chat.
real-time texting.
Yeah, as he was providing commentary right there. And so I whenever I was watching it, I'm like, this is what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And it's funny how the girl's telling him to be friendly and to smile, and this girl is smiling at him, and she brings him up to his room and she shows him the goods, and he's like, well, I gotta go. This is too much for me.
All right.
Yeah, because I've seen this movie, ever since I was a kid, and my parents, they rented I think it was like the Fox VHS when VHS was kind of going into its peak at that time, getting real popular. And I think the VHS, the home import version, the Americanized version, it was dubbed in English, and it didn't have I think they cut out a lot of scenes from the original cut. So that restaurant scene is new, where he was eating all that soup. They cut that out completely, that whole scene. And then that nude scene was cut out as well in the original VHS release. So a lot of minutes were cut out from the film. But yeah, it was almost like watching an entirely new movie. I mean,
you are correct, Long. There are cuts of this film that were released in the UK, the US, in the 80s are about 6 to 8 minutes shorter.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I don't recall any of those scenes, and I do remember like it was all dubbed and everything as well, so it didn't have the classic Bruce Lee fighting yelps or whatever that he does.
Yeah, not a lot of them.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. The first time I saw this a few years ago was on Amazon Prime, and it was in English.
Yeah.
And I also don't remember the nude scene. I swear it was Prime. I don't think that was on there just 3-4 years ago. And when I bought the Bruce Lee bundle on Vudu, and I watched this, I'm like, "There's titties in this movie? I don't remember this."
Yeah. But yeah, this is a classic movie. You have any Chinese spare ribs? Chinese spare ribs?
Spare ribs? Yeah, let me show you.
Yeah.
Lift up your arm.
I know. Anyways, no, it's an interesting setting. I was like, they set it in Rome and stuff, and fish out of water story. The two karate fighters going, towards the end, and then the last minute plot twist of the uncle.
The uncle is really behind it all too.
I know. It's just so weird.
It's so out of
sorry,
nowhere.
You're dying. You're dead now.
Yeah. It's like, I'm trying to go back home to my wife and kids, and you guys keep slowing me down. I got to show for something for being out here. And then evil laugh, evil mad scientist laugh from his monologue. As a kid, I didn't understand why he was like doing that too. So watching this with being an adult now, it's like, oh, that's why he's doing it. He's just trying to get back home quicker.
Yeah.
So, with a wad of cash in his pocket to show for it.
Yeah. No. I liked reading. I remember we had the privilege of being with Chuck Norris in the same room whenever he was giving a speech, and one of the questions asked about this was, did Bruce Lee really rip a piece of your chest hair off? And I sent y'all a picture of who wore it better. And as soon as I saw him take off his shirt, I immediately thought of Austin Powers with all that damn chest hair.
Oh.
And He said, no, that was fake. And he said, but if Bruce had really ripped off his chest hair, there would have been a real fight there, a real fight to the death. And, I like the humbleness, because there's always the talk, who would win, right? Everyone talks about who would win. And Chuck is credited as saying that in a fair fight, he said Bruce would win. But then there's interviews with Chuck where he talked about how, Bruce really never fought in a tournament setting, that he really never fought people. He would hit a lot of bags. But it's different whenever you're in the ring. And, so alluded to, he'd have some trouble, which Bruce also he wanted Chuck because Chuck was one of the few people who could keep up with him. So, we'll never know. But I like the humbleness and the hint of what if that goes back and forth, with what we have regarding those two. And that's cool. But yeah, he, during that phone call, Chuck mentioned this too, but it's credited on IMDb. Chuck said, so you want to beat the seven-time world champion? He's like, no, I want to kill the world champion. I don't want to beat him. I want to kill him.
Yeah.
And he does. He kills him in the movie.
Yeah. But even then, I was like, any normal person who watches this show or this movie wouldn't know that Chuck Norris at that time was a 7-time world champion, because it's a niche sport.
Yeah.
But still, even more niche than what, MMA was.
Oh, yeah.
MMA is very well known now, but it had to fight through all the pay-per-views to get known, and UFC
controversies,
all those controversies, and and that was within our lifetime. Can you imagine how underground it is back then?
Before the internet, yeah,
big time.
You only read about it in the magazines.
Yeah,
so remember those? I remember those martial arts magazines too, back in the newsstands.
Yeah, Kung Fu Illustrated, all that.
Yeah.
I agree, and I like the settings of this movie. They actually shot it on location in Rome, which was difficult too, because the studio almost didn't want to do that. So by saving money, they shot most of this film really to one location, ideally the restaurant and behind the restaurant.
Yeah,
and then the Coliseum at the end and a couple other shots. I mean, the movie doesn't have a lot of locations, and that was how he convinced the studio to let them shoot this on location to save some money that way. Because, otherwise martial arts films were a lot of times shot on studio sets and things like that, or they were shot in overseas, in China and stuff. They weren't really shot by Hollywood studios, because it was still kind of talk about niche sport. Martial arts films at this point were still kind of branching out despite some success. They weren't really widely worldwide. They weren't box office gold or anything, even in the 1970s. But this movie, I think it works better to have it shot. Like, it's cool to see it shot in the Coliseum. I think they were limited to how much time they had. They only had a couple of days to shoot there, and that's why there's a lot of wide shots of the Coliseum and other parts of the film. So they took advantage of using as much footage as they could, I believe, of it. But it makes for a good setting. And it lost in the shuffle of Bruce and all the restaurant guys. There's also the girl played Miss Chen. She's been in several of Bruce's films, and she's actually really good. She's still alive today, and was still acting up to a few years ago. I think she finally retired. Was still making films in Japan and stuff.
Man, she was quite the snack back then.
Yeah, she's very pretty.
Was.
And that's why Bruce, with this hooker thing, tries to hit on him. I'm like, he's got this beautiful one right there. What does he need that for? And but she's very good in the movie too. And I like that about it. I think my favorite fight in this movie is probably the one against Chuck at the end, because it's the climax of the film, so it's going to have the best choreography, the best fighting.
Yeah.
But there's some fun moments in this movie, and it plays well. It's well paced. It goes quick. It's an easy watch. I find it very enjoyable. I don't know if I have a favorite Bruce Lee fan, because I like this one. I like a little bit of Fist of Fury and Enter the Dragon. Game of Death is kind of the oddball one because isn't there footage from this movie in Game of Death that they used and they reshot? Yeah, if I remember right.
They
Game of Death
pieces of it.
was Game of Death was the film he started on when he died, right? So it never finished it, and they used footage from other films and stand-ins to finish it. And I think there's footage from this movie and Game of Death because I remember seeing that and going like, I've seen that before. It's like the same footage, and just with different lighting and stuff. It's really weird. Because doesn't Chuck Norris appear in Game of Death as well?
I want to say he
used footage.
Yeah.
Or there was an idea for them to do that, and I think they scrapped the idea. Yeah, I remember reading something about that. But yeah, I have to go back and watch Game of Death. I know it's not very good, but it's just interesting to watch. But yeah,
still an entertaining flick.
Yeah, I mean, hey, considering it almost didn't get made, But I think this is a fun movie. I think it's cool that Bruce got to make his action comedy. And I was looking because I was curious if Drunken Master had come out already when this came out. And it actually came out after this because I know that was a pretty successful action comedy film from that era. But I didn't realize it came out after this film. So I thought maybe that had something to do with Bruce making this movie was because he saw his peer make an action comedy that was successful. But I guess not since it came out afterwards. So
maybe so.
Yeah, which I've actually only seen parts of Drunken Master. I've actually never seen that movie all the way through.
I just remember him drinking and slapping the snake.
Yeah, everybody remembers that. That's the scene that always shows up like in clips and stuff.
Yeah.
So, but any other final thoughts or anything on The Way of the Dragon?
I've always felt this film definitely has one of Bruce Lee's best nunchuck scenes. Too.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
He uses 2.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's a signature weapon, his nunchucks.
Mm.
And what else? Yeah, definitely one of my favorite fight scenes. One of the most famous fight scenes in film history. Chuck Norris versus Bruce Lee. So, yeah.
They had him eat more. He wanted him to eat more to appear bigger, more solid, like tankish, And he does have that kind of.
Chuck, are you talking about Norris or Bruce Lee?
Bruce wanted Chuck to eat more.
Oh, okay.
So he could look a little bit more formidable, is what he said.
Yeah,
and he does look like he can take hits and keep on going.
Yeah, but then Bruce, you see Bruce was not a huge guy, but you see the strength of him in the stretching scene where his back muscles all stick out, and you're like, good Lord, man, you realize how strong this guy is for being a small or scrawny guy,
Mm-hmm.
It's like, damn, man, his back muscles were insane. He was in impeccable shape, throughout his martial arts career, his whole life, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And Bruce, people don't realize, was a machine. They said he'd wake up at 4 a.m. and train and then do his business throughout the day and train some more before night. I mean, he was, unstoppable. Wake up, Matt. Stop falling asleep on the.
I'm just nodding.
Just nodding. Just bop your head on the fucking laptop. But yeah, man. The Way of the Dragon. But it's a fun flick, man. And like I said, for years, a lot of these Bruce Lee films weren't even able to watch them. But a few years ago, I know Amazon Prime had them all available. And now they're pretty readily available in streaming services and streaming packages online.
Yeah. Boy, that translator was kind of a fruitcake, huh?
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, definitely plays up the comedy aspect with his fruitcakeness.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Or if that was Bruce's idea.
Yeah. So, anyhow. Yeah, I don't have any more thoughts. Just definitely one of my favorite films of all time. So.
Yeah, it's a good movie. All right. Well, before we get out of here, we are going to the next 3 or maybe even up to 4 weeks. We haven't decided yet. We're going to cover movies. We're going to try something very interesting. We've talked about this for several months now. We're finally going to do it. We are going to cover a string of films that none of us, all 3 of us, have never seen before, which is quite a task to find a movie that all 3 of us have not seen. There's usually one of us has seen it or 2 of us have seen it, but to find one all three of us have not seen was quite a task. And we've definitely got 3 movies on the.
All thanks to Mark, Mr. Movie File over there.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen this. Oh, yeah, I've seen it.
Matt's seen a lot too.
Yeah. Matt's like, oh, I haven't seen this, but me and Mark have seen it. So
that's how it was.
So yeah, so we're gonna do this, man, and we've got at least 3 for sure we know that we haven't seen, and we may come up with a 4th one for the theme for the month of March, and so it'll be fun. And we're gonna start that out with a movie that has been on my radar for a while. This is probably the most modern film we're doing of the 3 so far, and that is it came out in 2012, and it stars Tom Hanks and Halle Berry, and that is the sci-fi epic Cloud Atlas. I've never seen this. None of us have seen this. I've always wanted to see this. I remember seeing trailers for this and thinking it looked interesting, but it didn't play well in theaters, and it kind of got lost in the shuffle of things. But yet it kind of got this underground cult-like following where people were saying that it's way better than it was originally taken to be. Because from what I understand, it's a pretty complex film. So it takes a bit to take it all in. So we're going to take it all in this week and watch this almost 3-hour epic and see what it's all about, and review and discuss Cloud Atlas next week on the show. It is streaming on Amazon Prime. If you've never seen it, want to watch along with us, so check it out, and we will cover that next week. And as I mentioned last week, the website I used to drop the trailer audio has not been working, so there's no trailer audio, so we have to do our best to preview the film for you, and hopefully we did that by discussing a little bit of a movie we don't even know anything about because we haven't seen. So that's next week of the show. That's Cloud Atlas. But until then, the rebelradiopodcast.com, as I mentioned, for all your Rebel Radio needs. But be safe out there. Again, another shout out to our boy Frank. Speedy recovery, my man. Until next time, this has been Mark.
This has been Matt.
This is Long.
Remember, as always, just go there and do it.